So my name's Karena Stipp, and I am a realtor. I specialize in homeowners. That actually happened after I was heavily involved in my mother's move after she'd been on the farm where I grew up in Missouri for 44 years. And I knew in that process there had to be a better way. And I was, by gosh, I was going to find it. So as I've kind of explored that whole idea, I've learned that there's just a lot of things that seniors need to know and need to be educated about, and myself included, because I'm following right behind you. So anyway, that's what this is all about. And so today we're going to talk about how to pay for senior living, and I'm so happy to have our 4 expert panelists here today to talk about all the different ways that are avenues for you to pay for senior living. So we're going to start out with Laura Felger and have everyone introduce themselves and tell a little bit about what you do.
Okay, all right. So as Karena said, my name's Laura. I am in the Medicare business for 10 years, starting in the state of Nebraska, if you can believe it. I lived in Omaha for 25 years, but I am a native of the Iowa, Illinois, Quad City area. And have lived back in that area during my career, but have recently relocated to North Carolina 2 years ago now to work for First Medicare Direct, which is the Medicare branded arm of First Carolina Care. And First Carolina Care is a North Carolina only insurance company. We do Medicare products and group insurance, and our corporate office is in Pinehurst. Well, no, it's not anymore. We moved because we outgrew it. It's actually in Southern Pines now, so we just moved up the road a little bit. But we're in the heart of Moore County. We are not the biggest insurance company, but we compete with the big boys, as I say, here in the Thunderdome that is Wake County. But, you know, it's funny. I say I'm here to tell you one thing. Medicare doesn't pay for your housing. It won't pay for senior housing. But I'm also here today to discuss maybe strategies that you can take from a budgetary standpoint as you prepare for those days, where perhaps your Medicare can help contribute to some of those strategies. And then also just to kind of talk about what Medicare does pay for and why. Do you want me to go that deep now, or do you just want
We're going to get to that when we get to,
okay.
Yep.
So
we'll circle back.
Other than I'm an Iowa State University graduate, proud Iowa State University graduate, go Cyclones. Nobody down here knows what that's about, but I just always have to put that in because it's
Send me your mic.
All right, so I'm going to hand to him.
Okay. So next up is Kevin Houston with Houston Law Firm, and Kevin is an expert in a number of different things. Today he's going to kind of hone in on Medicaid, and so I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll circle back when we start talking about the actual subject matter in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, great. So I'm Kevin Houston. I've got my own law practice. We're called Houston Law Firm or Carolina Estate Counsel, and so we do strictly elder law, estate planning. So we do a lot of Medicaid cases around the state. Estate planning, wills, trusts, estates, powers of attorney, all those things, that you know a little bit about, I'm sure. We do estate administration, probate work as well, and we also do VA benefits, which Dave is going to be talking to you about. But basically, we try to take advantage of any resources from government programs like Medicaid, special assistance, VA benefits to help seniors and others pay for care. So we'll talk about specifically today, Medicaid and special assistance is what we'll be focusing on.
Okay, thank you. And so David Cole is a combat veteran, and he's with the Senior Veterans Council. So we'll start with David and have him introduce himself.
So I'm the founder of the Senior Veterans Council. We're not the VA. We don't work for them. We're not paid by them, but we are privately accredited or licensed by the VA to do this work to assist veterans and widows of veterans on accessing the bureaucratic mess that you have to go through to get VA benefits, which many people aren't even aware of, that I'll talk about. We're kind of sort of like you go to an attorney or a CPA to represent you with the IRS if you don't want to deal directly. So that's the work we do. I'll be talking about a range of benefits that are available from the VA, all the way from cash benefits to access to the VA Medical Center, and benefits to help you, certainly not necessarily to pay for care in some cases, but also to stay at home and get home health care.
Okay. And last but not least is Bryant Sikorsky, and he is a wealth advisor and financial planner, along with some other certifications you can see there on the screen. So I'll let Bryant tell you a little bit about himself.
Good morning. Bryant Sikorsky, Stratos Wealth Partners. Thank you for having me here today. I'm originally from Michigan. I'm a Michigan Wolverine, go blue. I worked the first 10 years of my career in manufacturing, including General Motors as an example. And then about 22 years ago, I got into financial services. Started out with Edward Jones for about 5 years, and I was recruited over to Merrill Lynch for 5. And for the last almost 12 years now, I've been an independent financial advisor. I have my own firm. I'm going to talk to you today about how you can readjust or maybe reposition some of your money to more effectively and to leverage it to more effectively pay for long-term care for you through the acquisition of a long-term care insurance policy or annuity.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
So because we're talking about how to pay for senior living, I thought it was suitable to at least insert one slide and just discuss, these are all of the different choices that you would have. There might be others you could think of, but from everything from aging in place, downsizing to a home that suits your needs. So maybe you've raised a family in a 2-story home where all the bedrooms and baths are upstairs. That happens a lot, especially in Raleigh. Living with family, 55 plus communities, independent living communities, which we talked about at our seminar last month. And then there's assisted, skilled, and memory care. Those are all licensed by the state. And continuing care retirement communities, which are also licensed because you go in as independent and then you transfer to any of the other parts of that community that you'll need as you need them. And so we'll actually do a whole seminar at some point in the future about continuing care retirement communities. But a lot of choices out there and sometimes difficult, and a lot of emotions and family discussion often I find I'm in the middle of sometimes about who goes where and what happens and what's the best choice. And so there's just a lot of considerations, I understand. So we're going to start out with Laura, and she's going to talk about Medicare and address when someone's eligible, what's covered, hospitalization, rehab, and some of the licensed care.
Okay, so I'm willing to make a bet that all but one of you are on Medicare in this room. Well, no, there's a young lady behind you. So Medicare is your earned medical benefit that people who have worked up to 40 quarters in the total years of their life and their spouse qualify for in your old age, so to speak. Old age, what does that mean, right? But basically, when you turn 65, you qualify for Medicare Part A and Part B if you've earned those 40 total quarters. You can also qualify for Medicare if you have been identified as disabled and certified as disabled by the Social Security Administration after 24 straight months. So you can be as young. Well, I have a client who's 35 years old who has qualified due to disability and therefore is on Medicare as well. But we all earn it in the course of our lifetime in one way or another. Medicare Part A, obviously your hospital coverage is the stuff that's technically free. You don't have to pay a premium for that. But you do have to pay premiums for Medicare Part B, as in boy. And then there's all the rest of that, all that gray area in between that someone like me likes to kind of help navigate. And basically what it means is A and B pay 80% of your coverage, and you need to figure out how to fill that other 20% with coverage, and then you have to find a drug plan. And so that's where people have expense. That's where people have rising expense. I don't know how many of you got your annual notice of coverage in the mail. My father's 81 and lives in a 55 plus community. Yay, 55 plus. It's a perfect spot for him. But his Part D premium doubled this year. And I don't quite understand why. So there are things that are happening in the world and they affect your bottom line. And so those are the kinds of things that maybe there are some strategies out there that might be able to help you stabilize some of those fixed expenses, maybe shift some of those fixed expenses towards something more determined towards living, like something that Bryant deals with the long-term care. You know, there's only so much money coming out of our nest eggs, and how can we maybe make some decisions early on that might give you a nice comprehensive opportunity to get everything without going completely broke, right? I will tell you that Medicare pays for senior nursing care if it is a requirement for your rehabilitation coming out of the hospital. All right, that is the only thing that is covered by Medicare. You get up to 120 days a year. Usually the first 20 days are paid for, as in there's a $0 copay on your end. But the days 21 and on, generally there's a breakdown of pricing as you get towards the 120 days. Do you ever do a full 120 days? I don't know. It just depends on what your rehabilitation needs are. But that is different than saying, I'm ready to go to a nursing home, like what we used to know as what a nursing home was, and saying, I'm going to go voluntarily. Medicare doesn't pay for anything like that. Medicare doesn't pay for memory care, doesn't pay for assisted, and of course anything lower than that. Home health is a different story, and it depends on what kind of coverage you have. There could be added benefits outside of Medicare built into something like a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you some home health, but that is not required by Medicare. So it's a complicated process, but all of us here are going to try and help you piece that together if we can in this short amount of time. You're all going to walk out knowing exactly what to do. If we can, as to what your priorities are, what your financial risks are, and maybe how to make a very individualized decision that can get you to where you need to go. But we can't predict the future either. So
Right.
That's my 2 cents.
I think that's a good way to put it, to piece it together, because it really becomes kind of a puzzle that you have to sometimes work on as you're going. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when you're 65, there's one thing. But you're on Medicare. You could be on Medicare for, if you live to be 100, it'll be the insurance you're on the longest in your entire life. And there are people in this room who will definitely live to be 100. There are people in this room whose quality of life at 75 is very different than what their parents or their grandparents' quality of life looked like at 75. The baby boomer generation is aging out loud and aging with intention. And there are longevity issues, thank God, that come with that. But then you've got to make sure your money's still there as you live the way you want to live into your retirement.
Okay. So I think it's going to be easiest if we get through each of these subjects, and then we're going to open up for questions at the end. So if you think of something, you might want to jot down there on your notepad or something, so that we can circle back and make sure that we answer all your questions at the end. So we're going to switch now to Medicaid. And talk a little bit about the purpose of the program, how it's funded, qualifications, what types of care are covered and what's excluded, what types of housing are covered and not covered. And then if you can speak a little bit to spending down assets as well, Kevin, that would be, I think, a piece that you would a lot of us would be enlightened about.
Sure. Good. Okay. Yeah, so as Laura mentioned, there's very little that Medicare will do in terms of paying for long-term care. So Medicare is kind of out as far as that goes. So Medicaid becomes very important. That is the key program that you'd want to know about in terms of paying for different levels of care. So quickly, I'll try not to make this too long and boring, but quickly, there's about 4 different levels of care, I would say more or less. There's in-home care, assisted living care, memory care, and then skilled nursing care. Now, Medicaid, or you might say long-term care Medicaid, will cover the in-home care and the skilled nursing care. Those are covered under the Medicaid program. Now, I'll get into the eligibility criteria for that in just a second. But for in-home care, there's programs called CAP, C-A-P, CAP, and PACE, P-A-C-E. So those are in-home care or community-based programs that do not just rely on a skilled nursing facility. And Medicaid falls under those categories. for in-home care. Now, PACE can sort of cover the gamut in terms of adult daycare, in-home care, and some mix of other facility care too. But CAP is strictly in-home care, long-term care, or a nursing facility. That's what a lot of people think of in terms of Medicaid, because that's where most of the Medicaid funds go, into paying for long-term care in a nursing facility. And then there's other programs, assisted living and memory care. Those are covered under what's called special assistance. In North Carolina, it's called special assistance. It's a completely different program than Medicaid. If you get on special assistance to pay for assisted living or memory care, that does mean you're also on Medicaid automatically. So Medicaid is a package deal, comes with it. So the tricky thing, now I'll start to get into a little bit of the eligibility criteria. With special assistance, and again, special assistance is for assisted living or memory care, like with cognitive issues, dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on. The main problem with special assistance in North Carolina is there are very strict income limits for those programs. And so they look at the income of the resident, not the spouse, just the resident. But for memory care, the income limit is only $1,717 a month, $1,717. And for assisted living, it's $1,355 a month of income, gross income. So that puts a lot of people, unfortunately, in a situation where they cannot, under any circumstance, get special assistance. And in different states, there are different income caps. I've had clients that have had to go to other states to get this type of program and benefit for assisted living. So anyway, with Medicaid, there's not the same income cap. So if you're in a nursing home and you're spending, maybe you've got $5,000 a month of income, the nursing home bill might be $10,000. That's going to wipe out your income. So that's good enough. As long as the expenses exceed your income, you're eligible for Medicaid based on the income criteria. Now we get into the assets. So let's talk about assets here, okay? So it's a big topic of discussion in terms of asset qualification for Medicaid. For a single person, it's a $2,000 asset limit for any of these programs, special assistance and Medicaid. Okay, $2,000. Now your house is exempt, one car is exempt, $10,000 of life insurance is exempt, prepaid funeral expenses or prepaid funeral plan is exempt. Most other assets are countable towards that $2,000 asset limit. Now, if you're married, the deal is they'll let the community spouse who's at home keep roughly half of the assets, and the other spouse who's in the facility must spend down to $2,000. So if you went in with $200,000 of combined assets, the community spouse has to spend down to $100,000, can keep $100,000, and the institutionalized spouse must spend down to $2,000. So basically, you're having to reduce the assets by about half. Okay. Now, in assisted living, it's a $2,000 asset limit there for special assistance, for memory care or again, assisted living. The interesting thing there is you can actually give away assets to your spouse and qualify for special assistance. So that's an easy strategy that works. If you're married, gift the assets to your spouse, and you can get on special assistance to get under that $2,000 asset limit.
Is there a time limit for that?
There's not, no. With any Medicaid programs, you can give away assets to a spouse or to a disabled child or to a child under age 18, and it's exempt, so they don't penalize you for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about if you don't have any of those?
Then you got to work with other asset criteria, other asset strategies to try to reduce assets. I'll try to touch on that. I don't have much time, but let me touch on some of those briefly here. First off, if we're thinking about asset planning for any of these programs, special assistance or Medicaid, one thing to think about is pre-planning. Like you're on a situation now where probably none of you are in a facility, right? So you can actually pre-plan. For long-term care Medicaid, if you were to gift assets ahead of time, 5 years ahead of time, then you can protect the assets from Medicaid. There's a 5-year look back. For special assistance, it's a 3-year look back. So again, by gifting assets to anybody, anybody but your spouse, let's say, you could shelter assets from Medicaid. Typically, we use irrevocable trust to do that for tax reasons and for just other liability type reasons. But you can give away assets to an irrevocable trust or to your children or somebody besides your spouse, and reduce the assets ahead of time for Medicaid. Okay. But again, 5-year look back for long-term care Medicaid, 3-year look back for special assistance. In addition, I would also highly recommend you get a very solid power of attorney, because that power of attorney can authorize other estate planning techniques. So, for instance, I've got a woman who's in an assisted living facility. She's incapacitated, but she has a power of attorney that authorizes the spouse to transfer her IRA to him, her house to him, and so on. And that power of attorney is a lifesaver because that allows him to move the assets so that she can qualify for special assistance. But you have to have a power of attorney that specifically authorizes things like gifting, setting up trusts, changing beneficiary designations, creating rights of survivorship. Those are some key provisions that will be important for Medicaid planning. And then now if you don't plan ahead, basically then you're looking at qualifying for Medicaid in a crisis situation. And most of my clients who I do Medicaid planning for, they haven't done much planning ahead of time. So they're coming to me saying, how do we get mom or dad or my spouse on Medicaid? How do I get on Medicaid with all these assets? And so I mentioned some gifting things that work. If you have a disabled son or daughter, that works. But there's a lot of strategies. We use irrevocable trust, special needs trust for Medicaid protection in some situations. There's Medicaid compliant annuities. There's Medicaid compliant promissory notes. You can pay down your mortgage, pay off debts. You can renovate your house because your house is exempt. So there's different strategies that you can use in a crisis situation. I've got dozens of them that I've used. I can't get into all of them obviously now. Maybe if there's specific questions, I'd be happy to go over some of the strategies later, but I feel like at this point I should probably pass it to Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's it. There's a whole lot to cover,
exactly.
right?
So I'll stop there.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to David and talk a little bit about VA aid and attendance versus compensation, the new PACT Act, qualifications and benefits, and VA Medical Center benefits. And I'm sure you'll address this both for the veteran themselves and also spousal benefits as well. So I'm going to pass it to David, let you get started.
Right, World War II. Now, by the way, for these benefits that I'm going to be talking about, you don't have to have been shot at. You don't have to, like Kevin's father was over in Vietnam, you don't have to have served overseas. You just have to have served somewhere in the world on active duty during what's called a qualifying wartime period. As I look out there, it might be Korea, kind of a short war, by the way, 1950 to 55, or Vietnam that ranged from 64 to 75. Anybody here or a widow of a veteran that served during those wartime periods? Okay, a few of you. Or certainly we'll tell you you'll bump into them, right? So if you can get your head around and be aware of these benefits, which very few people know about, you can become the most popular person in your neighborhood or at church. Because it just saddens me to receive phone calls from widows or veterans who could have accessed these benefits 10 years ago, but the VA doesn't advertise them clearly. And it's, again, it's a bureaucratic, complex process. But broadly, there are two different ways, if you're a veteran or a widow of a veteran, to be able to receive benefits from the VA, a cash benefit. One is, people talk about pension aid and attendance. The name itself is a little confusing because people will hear that and go, well, I didn't retire. My husband didn't retire from the military. Why would I even think about getting a pension from the VA? It is a means-tested benefit, which means that if you are the veteran or widow of a veteran who served during a wartime period and who has reached a time in their life where they need some assistance with some activities of ordinary daily living. Now, that does not mean you need to be an invalid or bedridden, but if you get older, you are going to begin to need help. Hey, did you take your medicine? Someone being there to make sure you haven't fallen and you can't get up if you're getting in and out of the shower, getting to the doctor, some assistance with some activities of ordinary daily living. And again, your generation also has that attitude, I don't want no help, I don't need no help, and I don't want to be a burden on my family or no. They love you. They are caring for you if you think about it. So getting some cash benefit from the VA could, in fact, lighten the burden, right? So the pension aid and attendance benefit for a married veteran who needs help could be $2,600 a month. A lot of complicated things to get there, but it can be available while you're at home. You don't necessarily have to move into a facility. For a widow, the benefit is $1,400 a month, a little over that. For a single veteran, about $2,200 a month. So it's a good chunk of money. But if you're a veteran, perhaps an even better benefit is to be able to access, and by the way, this would apply to veterans that did not served on active duty, but not during those qualifying wartime pensions that I mentioned. You can get access to the VA Medical Center in Durham. And it's not 30 years ago where you went to die and you got all these complaints about care. It's centers of excellence, state-of-the-art stuff, right next to Duke Medical. I get some of my care there. You can get access there and have 100% medical, no deductible, no copay, all your prescriptions, $8 a month. And the VA can order out, provide, and pay for aides to come out to help you, perhaps as much as 20, 30 hours a week, which could take the load off. So if you combine that cash benefit with the VA Medical Center, and if you do reach the point where, wow, most people do want to stay at home as long as they can, right? If you reach the point where I need to go into a community, we'll call it a community, as Kevin mentioned, licensed assisted living, or even independent living, the benefit can still be there, and they are going to be expensive, as you know. You're looking $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Even with the VA benefit, that's a hard number to reach. Well, it does break up the love story, but the VA does offer communities. Well, we have 4 large care facilities, a 5th one opening up in Kernersville, Fayetteville, Salisbury, Kenston, up there towards Asheville, Black Mountain, and Kernersville. These are wonderful facilities that they're run by veterans for veterans. So you're not going to have your wife with you, but they're subsidized by the VA and can be very affordable. The VA also has a network of what is called, and I don't like the name, but it's called foster care. I think the better name is residential group homes. It's a home run by, there's a nurse or a CNA with 2 or 3 veterans there, and they're providing excellent care. You have to be ambulatory, but they'll provide even a bedridden veteran that can get up on a walker and get around. Great care, and the cost, the last I heard, is like $2,100 a month, for heaven's sakes. But again, your wife's not going to be with you, but hey, she can come and visit you. So there's a wide range of things. And then the flip side of the coin, that was all, well, actually the medical stuff is available to all veterans, regardless of when you served. And the other benefit is available to all veterans. If there's anything going on with you today that is a result, or you might think is as a result of something that happened to you while you were in the military, don't have to be in combat like Kevin's dad, but you were exposed to some events away from combat, or you fell off a truck, or you shot yourself in the foot. If you've got, or you hurt your back as you were practicing jumping out of an airplane, if you've got something going on with you today that you believe is the result of something that happened to you while you were in the military, that's called compensation for a service-connected disability. Don't ignore that. In fact, the VA just passed what was called the largest increase in VA benefits in the history of the VA. The VA already has 500,000 employees doing a lot of work, but this is the largest expansion, and it was called the PAC Act, P-A-C-T. It really expanded things for Vietnam veterans and basically also for Gulf War veterans around burn pits, contaminants, Agent Orange, if you're in the Navy or in combat, or even on the Navy ships or along the coast. So pay attention to those veterans. Give our office a call. We can mail you some information you can look at or send it by email and get yourself educated. If not for yourself, For those old guys you run into at McDonald's, with the campaign caps on, getting their hamburger. Hey, where did you serve? Did you know? Again, makes you popular. That's what we do.
Okay. So I'm going to switch to Bryant. Bryant, I know you have your own slides. Let me see if I can switch to these pretty quickly.
Well, let's just work from this.
Okay.
I'll just stay consistent.
Okay. All right.
Cool? Okay. So, let me look at these real quick.
So what
All
does a
right.
wealth advisor do? How does your role change as clients age?
Yeah.
How do people avoid working with a wealth advisor, or why do people avoid working with a wealth advisor?
Freudian slip there.
How do you? Well, you just don't call them. Yeah. What are long-term care policies and how do they work? What are life insurance policies with riders that allow funds to be used for long-term care?
Well, a wealth advisor's job is to take worry and fear and concern off of your shoulders and put it on ours. So I'm only 26 years old, but the markets of the last 5 or 10 years have been a challenge. So what does an advisor do? An advisor acts on your behalf to make sure that you're made aware, just like with the rest of these folks here, that you're made aware of changes, opportunities, laws, regulations as it relates to your money, whether it's your IRAs or a trust account or whatever. That's what we're there for, is to keep a track of laws and regulations that have changed so that you don't, make a mistake. I had somebody who decided that he was going to transfer all of his money from his IRA. He had $500,000 there. He was just going to gift it to his kids. And it would have cost him, $200,000 in taxes. And I showed him a way to take out a life insurance policy. And essentially upon his death now, all of his money would go to his kids and to Habitat for Humanity, and no disrespect, but nothing went to the IRS. And that's as simple as filling out a form correctly. So that's what we do, is we keep you appraised of any changes. How does our role change as clients age? Well, I say that there's this kind of bell-shaped curve that as you're young and getting into your middle-aged years, you're accumulating assets. You're saving money. You're putting it in an IRA. Maybe you're taking out a trust. You're buying some insurance policies, disability, maybe as an example, or life. As you get older, you make that critical transition from what I call accumulation to distribution. And that's where now it's like, geez, I've been saving money for 30 years on the chance that I'm going to retire or at least be financially free. Well, now I'm going to start living on that money. How do I make sure that I don't run out of money? That's a big question I get asked all the time from people who are retired or soon to be retired. Okay, I'm looking forward to retirement, but I can't figure out, am I going to run out of money? Another case that I've worked on just recently, or I do very often, is seniors who are living in a home, in their own home, by themselves, maybe mostly women, and maybe the husband has passed on, but now she's in this 4,000 square foot house all by herself. She's got $1 million in CDs and money markets, earning a couple $1,000 a year, and can't for the life of her figure out how she could ever possibly not live in this house. How could she get into that cool group home or assisted living or independent living that she really desires? Well, she met with me, we repositioned her assets, we sold her house and moved those into safe income generating investments. And now she's got more money than she knows what to do with, and is living in an independent living community. She's a life of the party there now. So that's another thought. So we really work on that transition from asset accumulation to distribution. Why do people avoid working with a wealth advisor? Well, it's the same as any other thing we don't want to do. We don't want to talk about our inevitable demise or our death, do we? So that's why people don't respectfully want to go to see an attorney about a will or an estate. They may not want to see me, or they may be, I would say, embarrassed about maybe some unique factor that they don't really feel comfortable talking about, a family issue or a medical issue. So our roles as advisors is to break down those walls of concern, develop a sense of trust and confidence and caring, so that we can be privileged to serve you and serve you appropriately. What are long-term care policies and how do they work? Wow, got a couple hours? That's a biggie. Does anybody here have a long-term care insurance policy? Okay. So I would hazard a guess with most of you. Well, first of all, let's back up. Who here can tell me, how can you pay for long-term care? Give me one example. How can you do it?
Write them a check.
Write them a check. So you save up a bunch of money and self-insure, right? Okay. Save money, save money, save money. Now you got 500,000 saved, and you're going to use that for long-term care. Well, what happens if it turns out that you need more care? You put your plan together assuming $50,000 a year out of your $500,000 portfolio, but you really need $100,000. Now what do you do? Oops, right? So that is why a lot of advisors will not advise you to self-insure, because you almost can't accumulate enough money to make sure that you're not going to run out of money. So what do? You typically go out and will buy, an advisor will work with you, and many of you in here, let's say, that bought a policy, bought what we call a traditional long-term care policy.
Do they even offer them anymore?
Yes, they do. But what they used to offer is unlimited benefit. I mean, meaning that you would pay a premium. You had to get medically underwritten. You needed a medical exam. You bought this policy, and it says, hey, if you contribute or pay, pick a number, $1,000 a month for the next 20 years, at some point you can draw that money out. And the hope is that you're not going to run out of money, because with those traditional policies, they do or do not, depending on your election, come with an inflation protection. So maybe you didn't pick that, and because you wanted a lower premium. Well, now it's like, holy cow, things are costing me 3 times what they were when I sat down and bought that policy. Number one. Number two is, for those of you particularly who have probably a traditional policy, it's the rates, the premiums keep going up, and you probably get these premium notices. Hey, it's not $700 a month, now it's $800 a month, and those will never stop. Those will never go away. So there are some inherent concerns about these traditional policies, because they may not cover you forever or make sure you don't run out of money. So insurance companies are not dumb. They saw people's concerns, and they've come out with some alternatives. One alternative is to purchase a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. So you buy a life insurance policy, and it's going to pay you a death benefit if you pass away. But if you need care, you can take some of that death benefit and move it over to pay for your care. Okay, so now you may not leave quite as much money to a beneficiary, but on the other hand, you're getting multiple years of coverage that you can take advantage of, you can file for. The other things to be aware of is, like a traditional policy, a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider does require medical underwriting, so you need an exam. Okay. The other good thing about them is that they will let you pay over like a 10-year time frame. You don't have to make a lump sum payment. You can pay over up to 10 years. Okay. So we got self-insure. We've got a traditional policy. It's kind of like your auto policy. You pay premiums and file a claim. We've got life insurance with a long-term care rider that's doing this dual function for you of taking care of giving you a death benefit to a beneficiary, or if things didn't come out that way, then you can tap into that reserve in order to pay your costs. Can anybody think of it? Give me 1 second, I'll be happy to get back to you. Can anybody think of another way that you can pay for care? Any other thoughts?
Use an annuity.
An annuity, very good, thank you very much. So you can buy an annuity with a long-term care rider. The good about that is that you only have to pay one lump sum. The bad is that you can't make additional contributions. You have to buy more policies. Okay, unlike a life insurance policy where you can make payments over 10 years, with an annuity. It can be a fixed annuity, it can be a fixed index annuity. Until recently, it could also be a variable annuity. But effectively, let's use a fixed annuity example. You deposit or you invest is pick a number, $100,000. Why would anybody want to do this? Well, with the $100,000 that you invest, you'll get $300,000 in claims that you can make. So with the life insurance policy or the annuity policy, both of them typically will give you a 3 times benefit of what you invest. An annuity does not require medical underwriting, on the other hand. So you can see what I'm saying is how you're kind of navigating through this labyrinth of, well, if I self-insure, I may run out of money. If I do a traditional policy, they're going to raise the rates on me and I'm not going to qualify because I've got a health issue. Then we've got like I said, the life with long-term care, again, has to be medically underwritten. And now we're at that annuity with long-term care rider that is very favorable in the respect it doesn't require a medical exam. You get 3 times in benefit what you invest. So it can be pretty attractive. Question.
Are the newer policies different than the traditional in that you got tiny little fine print down there talking about life limit? My father didn't go into assisted living until he was 97, and the policy stopped at 100.
Well, that's a great point. That's what I was mentioning earlier, that it used to be that when you bought these policies, you would make premium payments, and then once you filed claim, you did it until you were dead, even if you're 110 years old. And they backed off on those. Now, if you buy a traditional policy, you'll buy a number of years of coverage. Yeah, so to answer your question, what happened was everybody went and bought those policies, and the insurance company said, holy crap, we issued too many policies, and we thought these people were going to die, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And they just keep raising the premium.
And they just keep raising the premiums, yeah. So hopefully that answers that last one for you there, the different. Now these are very, as you can see, complex issues, so there's no one quick fix for anybody. I mean, you may really be a perfect fit for an annuity, and you might be a perfect fit for a long-term care, and you might be, the only alternative. Let's say you don't have a lump sum of money to buy an annuity with long-term care, or you don't have 10 payments to make for a life insurance policy. Maybe you buy a traditional policy today because you can get coverage started with only, I'm picking a number here, $300 a month, right? These other alternatives, you got to have a lump sum or payments or et cetera. But here, it's not ideal. But if you've got only a few $100 a month and you want to get some level of coverage, then a traditional policy might be your only alternative.
If you have an existing life insurance policy that you've been paying on for a few years, is it possible to add a rider after the fact?
Typically, no.
Okay.
No.
How old, is there an age cutoff as to when you can buy a traditional policy?
Yes, and it depends upon the provider, like the insurance company. So some insurance companies, like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, for a fixed annuity with long-term care rider, I think the max age is 85. So they're in there, and I think there's a fixed index annuity with long-term care rider that I think is like 90. So there are some policies that will insure the 80 to 90-year-old person.
What about the one with the monthly payment, the traditional route? I always thought you couldn't buy those after you were 60.
No,
You can buy them well into your,
yeah,
The premiums are
but the premiums are.
yeah, very good
Even
point.
if you got them when you were 8.
80.
My husband and I, we picked them up with our employer when they first started offering them. Wow, this is really a good deal.
Wow.
You ought to see what they want in premiums now.
Right, and so
Great.
that's something that Brian and I can work together on is, so you've got a supplement that's now over $300 a month if you're over 75. And you've got a drug fund that's double, and you've got so how, you can do some strategies maybe to free up some fixed expense to continue to meet that need, because you don't want to start all over again. Sometimes you've committed to this, you want to keep paying into it. And maybe there's something we can do on the Medicare side to lower some of those other policy premiums and then give you room to keep paying those bills. But again, it's an individualized process. The other piece I think that Bryant and I have done a lot of these panels together, and one of the things that I think we need to be very clear on is not all those policies are going to pay for assisted. We're talking about skilled nursing care here.
Virtually none of them.
So skilled nursing means you need an RN watching over you on a regular basis. That's not even memory care. Memory care is basically assisted with a locked door because you're
Whom are in.
okay. So skilled nursing is a whole different level of care that some of your long-term care policies are only paying for skilled. I'm going to give you a statistic, and I want you to think about this for a minute before you panic about, oh my gosh, I'm going to need these multi-million-dollar investments. The average stay in skilled nursing at the end of life, I'm sorry, but that's where you go eventually, maybe, is 2 months. Okay, it's not 2 years. There are people who do stay in skilled for 2 years, but the average American today, statistically, is in skilled nursing for 2 months. What the strategies I think need to focus on is that middle piece where we're actively aging and wanting to live our best, most healthy life possible in that middle area, right, Bryant? That's where I think your strategy and your minds needs to go. But I may be overstepping my bounds, but I've got an 81-year-old dad who just got back from the Outer Banks in his convertible. He is not, thinking about
Ask
how
the
do I pay
doctor
for
about
skill,
Lunesta.
right?
Don't.
Yeah. So we need to think more into that longest piece because eventually, if you do end up in skilled, maybe it's time to go on Medicaid anyway because you spent all your money the way you wanted to, which was having fun.
But now think about the fact that Medicaid will not pay for will not pay for assisted living or independent living. Okay, but if you have a long-term care policy and you're incapable of performing 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, you can qualify to get payment from your long-term care policy and be cared for in your home as opposed to in a nursing home. So that's the big motivator for a lot of people is to buy a policy that will let them to be cared for in their own home. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
If you're just living in a independent living, will it still pay for this in-home thing? That's your home.
Only if you would have to be incapable as certified by your doctor to perform 2 out of 6 activities of daily living, and then yes. So
That's what I think the industry trend
yes.
is independent living with home health
Yes.
is a great way to do this.
And a lot of the independent living communities are leaning into the assisted living space by having home health care. Either they have an office on site in that building or they work with a couple of different companies that come in. There's even the Cambridge, which is Apex, Wilmington, and Briar Creek. They actually have a menu of medical assistance that you can essentially lean into it having assistance without having to go to assisted living. And it benefits really all the way around because it's less expensive if you stay in independent and you have a menu of home health choices because it's always going to be more expensive once you jump to assisted. That's why these companies and these independent living communities are leaning into that space because they want to keep you.
And
They
the
want to
hospital
keep that
systems
revenue.
Are investing.
Yeah.
Hospital systems are making the investment in these facilities and embedding, like you said,
Right.
it's WakeMed at Cambridge.
Right. And I mean, one of the things that people don't really realize because they see that big sticker, right, that price sticker whenever they go to independent, and there's a little bit of kind of shock, right? And so one of the things I always encourage clients to do is to use a cost calculator and see what do you currently pay every month, you and or your spouse if you live with someone, and compare that to that independent living community because it may not be that big a difference once you factor in if you still own your home, you have property taxes and home insurance, even if you have the house paid off, right? And then you start looking at maintenance for that home, which, you kind of forget, oh, that's right, we put a new water heater in. Well, there's, $1,200 and you start adding those things up. So one of the savings, if you're in independent versus if you're in a detached family home, if you have someone who comes to you that's home health and you just need a little help, they're going to often, a lot of these companies charge you a 4-hour minimum if they come to your door. So times whatever it is, $30 an hour, let's say, okay? So if you're in an independent living community, they'll charge you in increments as small as 15 minutes. So if you literally just need somebody to come by and make sure the medicine's right because you're having a hard time remembering the names or whatever, you can pay for 15 minutes because they have so many doors to stop in that one building. So it saves you money in the long run.
What do you think it would cost you to meet with an advisor to review your current financial holdings, your current estate plan, your current long-term care insurance? How much do you think it would cost to have that done for you?
$250, $300.
It's free. I'm not aware of any advisor that's going to charge you anything to review your status and come up with a plan. We get paid. How do we get paid? We get paid by the insurance company or the annuity company or the life insurance company or maybe the mutual fund company that you invest your money in. We get paid a residual that in most cases you don't even see. So just don't not go because you're afraid how much it's going to cost. It doesn't cost you. I don't charge anything to do something like that. I'm sorry?
She'd like to do that. Yep, there's all the materials for.
Probably half of us in here need to do that.
Yeah.
We're supposed to go see a lawyer in about 2 weeks going over this estate planning, and she's gonna charge me $300. So
No, but that's just a different, it's just a different structure.
yeah,
you know,
I'm just very, because I have 2 life insurance and I'm clueless on what I have.
Well, like this young lady over here mentioned about, hey, we're getting coverage all these years and whammo bammo, all of a sudden your policy is worthless. Yeah. No, you're right. Grab a card, let me know.
Yeah, all the materials are up here in the
And
front as you leave
Medicaid, I
today.
am really confused on what I need to qualify. Our home is paid for. I don't know whether to transfer it over to my daughter. So if I have to go into assisted living, I don't want to be hit with.
I think
There's a
Kevin
tax
can-
implication for the daughter to do that.
Right, that's a good point. So, yeah, the house is exempt for Medicaid and for special assistance. That's not so much the issue, but Medicaid does try to recover against that property after your death. That's the real problem there.
But if I have a will and saying that it's going to my daughters.
Then the government takes precedence over the beneficiaries in your will because they're a creditor. So
Yeah, what a shocker.
like it is.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
shocker.
What's my option?
And then the other problem and the solution. The other problem is that you may end up, if you move to an assisted living, you may end up selling the house, of course, and now, so then your exempt asset becomes fully countable because it's cash, right? So typically we use an irrevocable trust for that. And as you very wisely stated in the front row, if you give your house to your daughter, that creates a future capital gains implication for her. She inherits your cost basis on that property, and she sells it. Plus, if she sells it during your lifetime, she doesn't have the $250,000 exclusion from capital gains that you would have if you sold it. So I'm not a fan of, and if she has a lawsuit, a liability divorce, now that's a lien against your property. So there's a lot of reasons not to give your house to your kids. So I would say an irrevocable trust probably makes the most sense if you're trying to protect it for Medicaid or special assistance.
So my mother passed away a year ago this month, and I had been, you talk about hammering away. I had been probably for 15 years begging her to get a will. And she lived in Missouri, and Missouri has transfer on death allowed. So she had put that on her property there, and she thought everything was fine. And she did have power of attorney. She knew she was ill, so we had medical power of attorney, all of that. And she owned a property in Florida. So when she bought that, she bought it cash, and it was kind of quick. So I said to her, we need to get my brother and my name on there so that we don't have to fight the state for it, since I knew she wasn't doing a will. So she actually had it written up, and it was kind of a quasi-transfer on death. And so months before she died, I called her, and I had talked to my brother, and I said, what if we pay for the attorney, and by the way, we have one, and Kyle will drive you. I literally did. And she knew I really wanted the will and the trust, so she did it. And in fact, we didn't end up paying for that. She paid for it. I knew that wasn't the issue, but I knew that if we removed all of the barriers, she would go do it. So thankfully, she did in May. She died in October. Okay. When she did that, one of the things the attorney found in Missouri was that the property in Florida had already been essentially transferred to us. It was not a transfer on death because Florida didn't have that same exact thing. So the lawyer did the closest thing. we would have, I ended up inheriting that. My brother got a property in Missouri. So I would have paid capital gains based upon when that was done, which was years before. So we sold it back to her for $1. This because she's still alive. We're able to do that. We sell it back to her for $1, and then it goes into the trust because now a trust is created. So when she passed, that's when I inherited it, and then I had an appraiser go out and give me a value. So I will now only pay capital gains when I sell it. I've got renters going in. When I sell that, if I sell it, based upon the dollar amount that was appraised in October last year. So that was the gift in that. And that's why you go see your attorney. That's why you get everything. And the other thing that Mom thought she had done, one of her vehicles, she thought she had transfer on death, and we could not find a title that had that. Because we had the will, we avoided probate, and we had everything taken care of within months. And we would probably still be dragging through that if I had not just pounded away.
As the daughter of a semi-elderly, he doesn't act that way, but trusts and wills is worth the $3.50 an hour or whatever those lawyers are charging you. On the front end, do the hard work. And I'm saying that out loud because I'm needing to do it for myself. I'm 55, I've got 2 children who are now married. My mother passed away suddenly, hit by a car, she was gone. Her trust was there. Her, all of those things kicked in and did exactly what they were supposed to do.
It's a gift to your heirs.
So please, if you're going to invest your money somewhere, get that work done. Because you don't know what's going to happen in the next hour. And having those things done. So I need to make an appointment with you. But that's a gift you can give to your family.
It's a roadmap for them to follow. And we had 0 squabbling, which I didn't really expect anyway. My brother and I get along very well. But, we had her house in Missouri was sold within a month, 2.5 months. We had it closed before the end of last year. And really all of the other things were taken care of probably by March. There's no way we would have been able to do that if we'd gone through probate.
And I hate to stir the pot. You ask your question, and I'll tell you another financial implication about large sums of money. Go ahead.
Well, actually, real quick. So we actually do free consultations. We do free document reviews too, just to throw that out there. Yeah,
Nice.
Go ahead.
Well, like you said, everybody's situation is different. Is there still a 5-year look back if you do decide to deed your property over to your children?
Yeah, that's right. 5-year look back for all the long-term care Medicaid programs, 3-year look back for VA benefits and for special assistance. Yeah.
So let's talk about liquidating large chunks of money. Because there's something called the Medicare IRMA that will come and find you if your tax return suddenly has a nice spike in income. Okay, and so this is where trusts come in. This is where long-term care can save you. But if you suddenly realize, I'm going to go live in independent living, and I'm going to cash out that $500,000 IRA, and that's going to be my escrow as I pay for my independent living, or something like that. Medicare finds out about this because it's a 2-year look back on your IRS modified adjusted gross income. And if you make more than $94,000 a year in modified adjusted gross income, or I want to say $196,000 for a married couple, they're going to they're going to raise your Part D premium, and they're going to raise your Part B as in boy premium. And depending on how many increments you've gone above that level, they're going to get their money. And so even making large moves like that, where you're saying, well, I've got the cash, I'm going to fund my independent living and my assisted living on my own, be prepared then to watch. Anybody had an IRMA come and bite them in the, okay?
But I knew ahead of time, but I had to make decisions.
Yeah, 2-year look back. If you know anybody who's 63 years old and getting ready to retire, realtors are real good at showing that they don't make any money. Try and make that IRS form look as poor as possible, because that's your first step in. Yes, sir.
So they use capital gain? I thought they just used income.
Whatever goes into your modified adjusted gross income on your tax return at the end. So if you're having to take any income, any profit off of that, it's going to affect you.
$250,000.
Yeah. Not fun.
Carol, you have a question?
Yes, I do. This is a shift in what the topic that we've been discussing. It has to do with when we're applying for coverage of our prescriptions. and you're going through all the different forms and saying, okay, I've got this, and what I'm taking. Is there any wisdom in picking and choosing which one not to include in your prescriptions because it would significantly reduce your monthly payment?
I'll tell you what, let's talk in the parking lot later. I really,
That sounds shady.
I'm kind of bound to kind of stay off topic with some of that stuff, but I'd be more than happy to talk to you, kind of afterwards.
So I bet the answer is yes.
The center has some rules about, the center has some rules she's trying to stay within.
Yes, I've done, but I know I can do it on my own by filling them out online. But I was just thinking of that as you were talking, and I thought, well, if this one costs X number of dollars, what if I just don't admit it or enter it, and then I just pay it on my own, and it'll significantly
I like your mind.
But that's an honest way.
I'll talk to you after the meeting.
That's a perfectly honest way to do it. Pay it on her, do it, I suppose. As long as she's paying it on her. Okay, you don't need.
No, but I think that's something that I just wanted to put out there is, it's so glorious to be retired and to have earned that opportunity, but it's the most complicated mess to then figure out how to keep your money and keep it for what you want it to be used for, and not what everybody else wants it to.
Okay, well, we have a question back here, and then Carol.
About this irrevocable trust, do you lose all authority to use it if you have one?
I would say no. You can build in some protections within that irrevocable trust, which also makes it a better option than just giving the property to your children. You can, for example, I've seen some attorneys actually have the owner of the property still where they are the trustee, or they can remove the trustee. They can still have a right to reside in the real estate and all those things, so that nobody can kick you out of your own home. So so there are some protections. You can change the final distribution of assets when you die. So the trust does give you some protections like that, so you don't lose all control.
Usually spouses give it to each other. You're in charge of my irrevocable, you're in charge. So if you get along with your spouse, that's great.
If you don't, that's a whole other seminar.
Make sure you pick the right child. I mean, I have two, and there's only one that I would put in charge of my irrevocable trust, because the other one would probably put me in a van somewhere.
Sure, but there's right. So there's no substitute for having a good trustee, so that is important. But you can reserve the right to remove a trustee if that person kind of goes sideways on you too. Okay.
And then Carol, you had a question?
This has to do with the VA for a neighbor of mine. It occurred to me, she is going to need assisted living and VA benefits. I don't know if her husband were in the service. Would it qualify her if her son had been in the service, or is it just spouse?
So her son is the disabled person?
No, her son is a retired military.
So the benefit is to the veteran or the widow of the veteran. So this would be his mother?
Yes.
And is she dependent? Is she active duty now?
She is in her home now, but I can foresee that she's going to be needing some sort of assistance. So my question is, because her son is retired military, would that qualify her, or is it only spouse?
Is he still active duty in the military?
She is not active.
Okay.
She never was.
So a veteran who's no longer active duty that could otherwise qualify for the benefit, if there's a dependent, like a dependent child, or the parent is dependent, there is a very minimal benefit. I think it's like $180 a month. But if the veteran himself does not need care and it's only a dependent child or parent that's dependent on him, it's a very minimal benefit, but there is one that's paid to the veteran for taking care of the mom.
Okay.
Other questions? Back here.
Some nuances to spouse of a veteran
wartime served, that's remarried, and the spouse is still alive.
Well, there's either a veteran, if the veteran's alive, the benefit always goes to the veteran. If the veteran dies, and at the time of the veteran's death, the wife was married to him and she's now a widow, then it would become a widow's benefit.
So there's a couple, I don't know if you're on that same track, but there's a couple I'm working with that they are not married and won't marry. And in his last divorce, he gave his benefits to that ex-wife. So when he passes, she gets those, and there's no benefit for him to marry this lady he's living with because she wouldn't be eligible for it. So that can happen, correct? Those benefits can be given?
The benefits you're talking about must be retirement benefits.
Okay.
Okay. Not
an aid in attendance. Okay.
Aid in attendance or the VA compensation claim.
Gotcha. Okay. Other questions? Richard?
Is there a way to get the IRA into a revocable living trust?
You don't do that.
So not really. If you were to transfer your IRA to a revocable trust, that would take it out of IRA status and would be taxable if it's a traditional IRA. So not really, but there can be reasons to name the trust as a beneficiary of an IRA. There's many different reasons you might want to consider that, but it just depends on the situation. It would avoid probate simply by naming a beneficiary. So that's what most people would do. Just name, a spouse or whoever as beneficiary.
And if you refinance your house and your house was part of your revocable living trust, what are the consequences of not putting your house back into the revocable living trust?
Well, so your heirs may have to go through a full probate administration to get the title to that cleared if they need to sell that property within 2 years of your death. They would have to go through the full probate administration and do the notice to creditors in the newspaper and all that. So I would suggest putting it back in the trust. It shouldn't be a huge ordeal to do that. Yeah, sometimes you can do a refinance, depending on the lender. Some lenders will let you refinance within the trust, but I take it that your lender wasn't that nice.
Well, I guess just a reminder, I've got a revocable trust, and anything that's tied to your house, like your insurance, they want to make sure that the insurance is also identified in that as a revocable trust, not just your house address. It has to show that it's in a revocable trust.
Like property insurance, for example? Okay, right. Yeah, so, right, most of the time they'll just make the trust an additional insured on the policy and cover it that way. I've seen cases where people didn't do that, and the claim actually went to the estate and went through probate and all that. It became a bit of a mess. So I think you're right.
I have a question. Would you mind repeating what the qualifications are for the VA pension? Pension, what the basic?
The veteran
Yeah.
would have needed to serve on active duty somewhere in the world during a qualifying wartime period. Typically, these days, World War II veterans are dying off. So Korea ran from, and I have a little flyer I can give you, Korea ran from June of 1950 to January 31st of 55. Vietnam started up in August of 64 and ran through May of 75. Now, you don't have to have served in combat, but somewhere in the world the veteran served, did it for nothing, went on with his life, and now he needs help. So the government, by the way, I have on my wall a certificate to my great-great-great-great-grandmother, who was the widow of a veteran of war of 1812, and she got in that certificate $4 a month, which I guess was a lot of money back then. So it's not a brand new deal. It's been around a long time. The principle is that if you're a veteran that served, or the widow of a veteran, you were married, you took care of him till he died, and now you need help, then if you meet the other qualifications, which is an asset limit that can be addressed, and also you have the care needs, and you're spending money from that care, then the government says, well, let us give you your husband's back pay, the pension benefit, for aid and attendance of these numbers I mentioned earlier. So that you can have extra money it's paid directly to the veteran or widow, so you've got some extra money to do the things you need to do.
So if the veteran is in a nursing home under skilled nursing care and is on Medicaid, what happens, can Medicaid say, oh, well, we have to use the veteran's pension first to offset expenses? Is that?
One of the principles of Medicaid is that all the money that comes in under the claimant's name, which would be the veteran in this case, are turned over to the nursing home as a patient liability or copay or payment every month. In the case of the VA, when they are notified that another government agency is paying the bill, they reduce the VA benefit to $90. And that $90 goes to the claimant, the veteran, in addition to the $30 a month that the state of North Carolina allows for patient miscellaneous expenses, haircuts, vending machine. So that benefit does fall to $90 if you're covered under Medicaid in a nursing home. There's some other weird rules about if you're in assisted living. Sometimes benefits can be partial benefits can go to the family, but fundamentally the benefit does get reduced.
Okay, we had a question back here. Go ahead.
I think if the veteran is living, has no spouse, and he is served in both of those two areas that you said, is there anything coming to him? He's healthy.
The veteran's healthy? No, because there's 4 fundamental requirements. You just don't call the VA and say, I served during that period.
Send me my money.
The 4 requirements are the service, which you say. Number 2 is the assets are below the upper limit. Again, as Kevin mentioned, the houses, cars are not countable. His income is offset by eligible care expenses because he needs help with activities of daily living. So you've missed a couple of them. Yes, he is the veteran, but sounds like he's fit as a fiddle right now, does not need help, and is not writing a check for care.
Well, so if he's living in an independent community, and maybe needs a little bit of help with something or other, like for.
Well, then you have to do an assessment. We can help you with that. We can help understand, ask you, how does he toilet? Does he wear diapers? How does he need help pulling his socks up? There's a whole long list of what do you need help with. Again, it's hard because that generation says, I don't want any help. Leave me alone. I want to go bingo night, movie night. I don't need any help. Well, that's independent living and generally will not qualify unless, as Karena mentioned, there's an on-site home health care person that he's contracting with, paying money to come help him. But it doesn't sound like you're there yet. Push him down the stairs.
Oh my gosh!
That was a joke. We're all very much in the
Yeah.
I don't go on record and say I had nothing.
Right.
But you don't have to be an invalid. You don't have to be bedridden. Okay? But you have to get to that point where your doctor says,
I was gonna say, who does the
you
assessment?
need some
The
help.
doctor has
And
to
as you
do
said
the
with your father, my dad made it to 99 and a half and lived with us. And the man Kevin knew him. The guy was climbing ladders at 95, 96. He was a retired electrician. So how busy was the struggle? Hopefully I got some of those genes. So he, but you know what? The fact of the matter is he needed help with medication management because he had to order those 2 little pills, had to cut them, had to monitor them. And you know what? No doctor in his right mind would not say that it would be a good, because he was wobbly, right? You stand up and you get one. No doctor would not say that it would be a good idea to leave the bathroom door open to monitor a fall risk, right? In case you fall, you get slippery and fall. So this was the rules changed in 2018, but back then, what I just described could get you there, okay? Because you need some help. Again, the rules do change from time to time, so nice to know what they are.
What happens if he would need help with transportation, like he doesn't drive?
That doesn't count. That's not on the list.
Hopefully the independent living is the place you're living.
That's
I mean, a lot of those places have vans that will run the circuit for people. as part of what you're paying your monthly rent for.
The fact of the matter is, if you do not die, all of you are going to need help at some point, unless it's a miracle. I mean, you are going to get older, and as you get older, you're not going to get stronger. So all the things we've talked about up here and mentioned, those things are you pay attention to them now, because you just don't like getting that call from someone that could have done something years ago, didn't know about this thing, and they've blown through several $100,000 of money. What do you say? You can't say, "Oh, I wish just get these things in your head, pay attention." And it's not for you, it's your neighbor, it's somebody at church. "Hey, did you know blah, blah, blah." Yeah, keep us in business.
Is that date incorrect up there? Should it be the 9th? Because I have it on my calendar for the 9th.
It is, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
No, this is the next.
Pay attention to the card, not the slide. Yeah. So the next seminar is on the 9th of November, and it's estate liquidation options. Thank you for catching that, Carol. I don't know where the 14th came from. Who knows? Oh, you know what? It was probably last time, was it?
December 14th.
Oh, okay. All right. I was looking too far ahead. Okay, other questions? Yeah,
Some
jump.
specific questions for David that I won't bring up now, but if you're able to stay for a little bit, we'd appreciate that.
Oh, sure. We're all going to hang out here, I think, if you've got some quick questions. I think we'll...
Laura, of course, will be doing business in the parking lot, but other than that.
The open trunk lid.
Yeah. Trunk or treat, it's October.
Meet at Forks, maybe to go down the street. No.
Okay, other questions? Yeah,
My husband meets that criteria as a VA veteran. If he passes, then do I get $1,400 a month?
Can you repeat the question?
Her husband is a veteran, and when he passes, does she get the $1,400 a month?
If she qualifies, and she doesn't look like she would qualify.
You have to have the same disability.
or something.
Okay, there you go.
If you were in a position that you needed it later, she could get it though.
Yeah, but you meet the various requirements. There is the widow's benefit of $14.29 a month.
Oh, widow's benefit?
Now, did he serve in Vietnam era?
Yes.
Did he serve, was he exposed to Agent Orange on a ship?
No.
He didn't go over there in country? Because there is some expansion of benefits for veterans and widows of veterans under this PAC Act, if you were exposed to such things as...
No.
Yeah, okay.
So I'd love to see you back here next month on the 9th. The postcard has all the dates for, I've talked to Jenny here at the center, and I think we'll continue into next year, but I have to match all of our subjects for the seminars each month, have to match the plan for the center, and they didn't have that lined out. So as soon as I have that, I'll start planning the seminars for next year. Okay, and if you haven't filled out your survey yet, if you would do that, it helps give me feedback. I know a couple of you have asked about, like for instance, estate planning. That's on my list. I just have to match the center's plan. So we'll get to all of the things that you're asking about, and it helps me to know if you've got some suggestions for other subjects that you'd like to have us cover. So thank you all so much for coming. Thanks so much to all the panelists. There's flyers here, and you can stay and talk as long as you'd like. Thank you all for coming. Have a great day.